In the previous course, we saw what is inside a receiver, electronic receiver. So if you talk about a communication system, this- okay. When you talk about a communication system, we have a transmitter, okay, what is shown as TX, and correspondingly you will require a receiver. That's how the communication takes place. And if it is wireless communication, the medium of communication or channel is free space. So it is within the atmosphere of the Earth or outside that, everything is termed as free space. So say like Chennai to Coimbatore is also free space, and Chennai to Mars is also free space. So it's all clubbed under free space. Now what we are going to see is this portion. How this antenna is able to transmit electromagnetic waves or receive electromagnetic waves. So far what you have seen is what is this electromagnetic wave and how it propagates. Now we'll see how this can be converted into a form which the electronic receivers can use it, or the electronic transmitters can transmit. So it is basically, this antenna is nothing but an interface. Okay. Interface between what? Between the transmitter and the free space, or between free space and the receiver, either way. So that is called as the antenna. If you look at the transmitter end, the antenna is going to convert the transmitted RF power into an electromagnetic signal. So you have a transmitted power which gets converted into an electromagnetic signal or wave. Generally, in electronic communication, they use this word signal. Okay, it's nothing but EM wave, nothing more than that. So this EM wave will propagate in free space. Now, once it propagates, it goes into the antenna, receiver's antenna. This will pick up the electromagnetic wave and converts them into signals for receiver. So here it is EM to generally some voltage levels at for the receiver. So that is the main purpose of an antenna. Okay. Now, how do we make an antenna? Uh, last course, we talked about something called as transmission lines. Basically, used to transfer power from the transmitter to the antenna. So it is the Priya, can you tell me any transmission lines which you have seen? Which is used in your house? Uh, Come again, your voice is not clear. Any transmission lines used in your house? So whatever I am talking is equally applicable for receivers also. So you have a receiver. From the receiver something goes, and on the rooftop you have an antenna. So what is this? This is called the transmission line. So have you seen something in your house? No, I can't get you. Sarup, what is she trying to say?
I don't know, sir. Couldn't hear.
Couldn't, yeah. Okay. Swarup, can you tell me something? Any
Cable.
transmission? Cable, excellent. This cable which goes from the set-top box antenna to your set-top box, no? It's black in color. So that is a transmission line. So it basically picks up the RF EM wave and then transfers that EM wave into the set-top box. So that is the function of the transmission line. So generally what we find is cable, and the actual technical name is coaxial cable. The black cable what you people see is nothing but coaxial cable. Most of there are many, again, transmission lines, there are so many types. But when you come to aircrafts, it's mostly it will be coaxial cable, or if it is very high power, there is something called as wave guide. You will come across this transmission lines also if there is very high power transmission. As the name says, it's nothing but a rectangular cross section pipe. So wave can go inside and come out of it. It just gets confined into this pipe and then it goes from one end to another. How the energy gets actually transferred and all is quite complicated theory. Okay. Even the coaxial cable, uh, the propagation of wave inside a coaxial cable is quite complicated. But just remember that there are two things, coaxial cable and waveguide, which are used as transmission lines in aircrafts. Right. Now, we have a transmitter which is pumping out power. A lot of power is coming out of this. Uh, this has to go into the atmosphere or free space. Okay. If you just connect it to a transmission line and leave it open, okay, you don't do anything, just leave it open. Little bit of radiation will leak out at the most. Okay. Last course we talked about something called as VSWR, voltage standing wave ratio. And if you consider this as a load, if there is no perfect match, the wave which was coming like this will get reflected back and it will go like this as a standing wave. So nothing goes up. So power which is going in this direction gets reflected back. This is not an efficient way of using or transferring energy using EM waves. So somehow we should reduce this reflected power, which means that this load should be terminated properly, or you should choose a proper load. And that happens if you can extend this point, the termination point of the transmission line, by lambda by 4 on either side. Now you'll ask me, oh, how can I extend coaxial cable? Saurabh, have you seen this coaxial cable closely anytime? A cut coaxial cable?
I'm not sure, sir.
Anyone in the class? Like
It has few insulation layers.
okay, it will have a central conductor, okay, a copper conductor. Then as you're telling, there will be insulator, some insulation layer, and surrounding that is a metallic sheath. This will be a metallic layer, okay.
To reduce radiation.
Yeah, if you cut it, this is what you will see. This is actually a cable, but if you cut it cross section, this is what you will see. One layer, one central conductor going straight, surrounded by this metallic layer or sheet, and they both are insulated with an insulating layer. They are separated rather with an insulating layer. Now all you have to do is take this center conductor, extend one wire which is lambda by 4. Take this outer layer, again extend it by lambda by 4. Then that's all. That makes your antenna. And of course you have to stretch it properly. Then once you do this, this reflected power reduces. Okay? So there will be large power transmission in the forward direction and very less in the reflected part. So most of it just gets radiated out. In fact, theoretically, they will say that 100% power will get radiated. But of course, there is nothing, theory and practically you will find a lot of differences. So you can assume that at least 90% of the power goes out. Okay. So that's how from a transmission line you make a antenna. The simplest antennas are nothing but two wires connected to the central, one connected to the central wire, the other one connected to the outer layer. That's all. Is it okay, Suru? Can you?
So can you
So
show
can
it with the proper diagram with a cable?
Yeah, definitely. I should be. Okay. You mean to say the cable, is it?
Sir, can you repeat it again? The inner part and the outer part of the antenna you mentioned, sir.
Okay, I'll draw it again. I don't have a cable diagram, but okay. So now that I told you about set-top box, you can imagine what the cable looks like, isn't it, Priya?
Yes, sir.
It's a black colored thing, huh?
Yes, sir.
With a circular cross section.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and suppose you cut it. Okay, I cut it like this, in this plane. Sorry. What I will see is a circle, right?
Yes, sir.
A cylinder cut in the cross section wise is a circle. So in this cable, what you will have is a central conductor. Okay. Then there is one outer metallic cover. Okay, you can say it's just like a cover running through and through.
Yes, sir.
These two things are separated using a insulator, some insulating medium.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now all you have to do is to make an antenna, connect one wire like this of length lambda by 4. Connect another wire in this direction with again lambda by 4 and then you will get an antenna. So that's how you make the simplest type of antenna is made like that. Why it should be lambda by 4 and lambda by 4 on either side is in antenna theory. And what the theory says is if you make such an antenna, the power transmitted will be 100%. You will not have any reflected power.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's what it says. Optimum radiation occurs if the segment of transmission wire is converted into an antenna is 1/4 wavelength long. At the most important thing is once you talk about lambda, you are talking about operating frequency. So this condition is saying what it says is at that particular operating frequency. So you don't expect that you have made this antenna for a particular frequency, it will work well for some other frequency. It will not. So it is highly selective. So antennas are extremely selective in nature. You can even say they act like filters. Okay.
Sir, how is wire directly transmitting to the free space?
Wire?
How is wire? It's a transmission wire, no, sir, with insulation layers and all. The lambda.
Okay, that's what I told you, no? Okay, the coaxial cable is very difficult to understand how it gets propagated inside that. But if you talk about a waveguide, it is just a rectangular cross-section pipe, okay, in which this EM wave can be made to bounce like sky wave. Sky wave we have seen, no? Like you have the Earth and then you have the ionosphere. So it goes up, comes down, and so on and so forth. Similarly, in a rectangular pipe, you can make the EM wave propagate. Again, the theory of propagation is very complicated. It is like, okay, I'll give a simpler example, like a water flowing in a pipe. Similarly, EM wave can also flow through a pipe. Is it okay, Suru? Is that what you want to ask me? How EM wave can propagate inside a coaxial cable? Was that your doubt?
No, sir. From the coaxial cable, how is it going to the free space? The lambda by 4 part is trans
Okay.
cable, no, sir. We are connecting.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
with
What happens is,
layers,
okay, now
how is it?
let's assume that you are sorry. You have made this lambda by 4 stuff. Now any current, change in current is going to induce some magnetic field, H. Now this magnetic field is a time varying field. So that will start producing some electric field. And this electric field, again being time varying, will make one magnetic field. So it shifts between E and M and so on and so forth. So that's how the EM wave then propagates in free space. Okay, if someone is asking you how sound waves propagate, so there is some compression and then rarefaction. No, that's how sound wave propagates, isn't it? Saru, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So it is alternatively compression, rarefaction. That's how the sound wave propagates. Similarly, in EM wave propagation, it is the electric time varying electrical signal and the magnetic signal, time varying magnetic signal, which keeps changing. So one leads to another, and so on and so forth. It just goes on. So to simplify that only, we have this. We represent it as a vector EH, and this is the direction of propagation. And this is what this time varying thing will lead to propagation of waves. EM waves is the heart of Maxwell equation. All Maxwell, what he is trying to finally prove is, if I am having this time varying quantities, then I can propagate the EM wave. That's how it came out. Okay.
Okay,
sir. Now, one important thing is, whenever you talk about any parameter of an antenna, it is applicable for both transmission side as well as reception side. If I say I have made an antenna of this lambda by 2 total length, and it is going to transfer 100% energy. Similarly, in reception side, the reciprocal theorem says that it will absorb 100% EM energy and then pass it on to the receiver. So similarly, then we'll be talking about directivity, gain, and all this stuff. So whatever is applicable for transmitter is equally applicable for reception. That's how this reciprocity theorem comes in. Okay. So basic antenna is just a length of a wire, or you can have a metal rod or a piece of tubing. Okay. It can be a solid rod or even a tube. Okay. Like what you see in cars and all is just a metal rod which is sticking out. Of course, you love that helix and all the stuff. Now, the length of the antenna is directly related to the wavelength of the transmitted or received signal. So this length is ideally lambda by 2. This lambda by 2 is also called as half-wave dipole. It's also called doublet, or because Hertz used it initially, it's also called as Hertz antenna. Any idea what experiment Hertz demonstrated? It will be there in your class 12 physics.
The deflection of a compass needle, sir, when a current is passed.
He did something more. Like everyone says, Marconi was able to, was the first inventor of radio. But before that, Hertz did something. Something very significant. Okay, just find out. Now, so this is again repetition of it. So the total length you should remember is lambda by 2. Okay. Now I told you this is as if it's this whole antenna is a load to the transmission line. Okay. And if this resistance of the transmission line matches with this resistance 73 ohms, then maximum power transfer will takes place. There will be no reflection, okay, no standing wave ratio. So it so happens that this lambda by 2 dipoles will have a resistance of 73 ohms. So what should be, Priya, what should ideally be the resistance of transmission line?
I'm not sure, sir.
See, this is 73 ohms, okay?
Yes, sir.
And transmission line also will have some resistance. I want maximum transfer to power transfer to take place, then what should be the transmission line resistance? Anyone else in the class? Sanjay?
No idea, sir. As of now.
Yeah. So as I keep telling you, to avoid this voltage standing wave ratio, we will have to match the resistances or load. So transmission line also should be 73 ohms. Once they are of same resistance, then maximum power transfer takes place. Okay. Now there will be a small difference, and that is actually it is not resistance, it is reactance or impedance. Okay. Impedance is a better word. Well, so you'll ask what is the difference between resistance and impedance. Impedance is also a resistance which is frequency dependent. Okay. This impedance is dependent on the frequency. So it's not a constant, whereas a resistance is a constant. So depending on your operating frequency, the impedance changes. And you'll have to match these two impedances of the antenna and the transmission line. Then you can have maximum power transfer. The other question which will be quite bugging is this thing. Okay, it's fine if it is a very small antenna or very high frequency antenna. I can always connect two rods and make an antenna. What happens if I am operating in which band is this? Approximately. We are on HF band, right? High frequency band. So if you look at up to 30 megahertz, you say it's a high frequency band. Then this length of the antenna becomes quite large. Okay, 26 feet for this particular at 18 megahertz. So 26 feet is what approximately the length of your hall plus 2 rooms, or 1 room. That's the length you're talking about. Definitely, you can't make a antenna of that length or we're using rods. So all you have to do is just connect normal wires or conductors, just tie it to any nearby vertical structures, whether it's a tree or a building, just connect it. Only thing is you have to have an insulator on either ends. Okay, so this will be an insulator. Okay, that is fine if you are operating from the ground. But aircrafts also will be having HF communication. So what are the possibilities of fixing these antennas on an aircraft? Anyone from the class? So how do I fix this antennas? Well, length is going to be quite a bit. Okay. Just it's nothing electronic. Just just tell me what is feasible. So generally, even if it is 18 megahertz, it's very high frequency for HF communication. Generally, let us reduce it by half, 9 megahertz. So we are talking in terms of around 50 feet. Saru, any suggestions?
So can you repeat the question?
I want to have an antenna, dipole antenna, which is operating at 9 megahertz, and I want to fit it onto the aircraft. So how will I do it? We are not talking about helix and all those things. Okay, let's. We want maximum transmission, so I don't want to lose on those helical stuff. I just want a proper dipole antenna.
Sir, along the wingspan, sir.
Yeah. So like U1 is telling from this point to this point, right? So in central, you put one stud sort of thing, then run the wire along the span. So generally what they do is they'll connect it like this from the rear to the wingtips. So you get more length. So if you see older generation aircrafts, you will see all these wires running around. Even airliners used to have this. But definitely as an aero engineer, you would not like to have so many wires running around. So they came out with different technologies. But it had its own limitation. Even now it has its own limitation. One thing you will find interesting is this coaxial cable has a impedance of 75 ohms. And the antenna has an impedance of 73 ohms. So it's almost same. That is one of the reasons why these coaxial cables were became quite famous compared to other transmission lines. Are you getting the point, Yuvan, that lengthy antennas can also be fitted onto the aircraft?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as I told you that this impedance is 73 ohms. I thought people will ask me one question on this 73 ohms. Anything you find strange when I say that it is 73 ohms? Or 75 ohms for that, sorry, for the cable. I am telling it is 75 ohms. There seems to be some ambiguity in what I'm trying to, the number I am giving. Okay, I'll make it, I'll lead you into that, into the answer. So let's assume this house is 2 floors and set-top box is kept at the bottom and antenna anyway has to be at the top. And let's assume Priya is staying at the top floor, set-top box just has to go to the terrace. And I am telling you that both are using coaxial cable whose impedance is 75 ohms. Now, can it be valid? Or worst case from W block to your hostel, I am running a coaxial cable and still I am telling it is having 75 ohms. Same manufacturer, okay, same dimension, same cross-sectional dimension. So what has changed in all these cases?
Length.
Length, very
Length.
good. So length has changed, but then from your basic physics, you know that resistance is proportional to length and inversely proportional to area, isn't it? Then how can I say that it is 75 ohms for in all three cases? Isn't it, Sarup? Doesn't make
Yes.
sense, right? Okay, that's the reason behind this is this 75 ohms is called as the characteristic impedance. So irrespective of whether the cable is of this length, let us say 10 feet, or you are running it for 1000 feet, the impedance what it sees is always 75 ohms. So it's the characteristic of the cable. As long as the manufacturing process and all is same and dimension is same, irrespective of the length, the impedance what the load is going to see is going to be 75 ohm. And that concept is called characteristic impedance. Okay. Now why it is and all you have to go further into the theory part of it. Okay, but just remember this terminology, characteristic impedance. And it's just the literal meaning, it's the character of the transmission line. Okay. Other than this characteristic impedance, then it is, as I told you, it is a very frequency sensitive device, okay, because of this lambda by 4 limitation. Okay. Now, one more terminology we'll have to introduce at this stage. It's called as the Q factor of an antenna. Q, it's just Q, it's called as Q, and there's no expansion for it. It is nothing but the design frequency by the bandwidth. I told you that antennas are very frequency sensitive. Do you think it's a very desirable property? If not, why? First of all, do you want the antenna to be really frequency sensitive, or you don't want it to be frequency sensitive?
So don't want it to be.
Why, Yon?
So due to less frequency, we have to have more length on that.
No, that is fixed. Okay, the band is fixed. Let us say I am working on VHF. I am working at 100 megahertz. 100 generally for aircrafts it is, I think, 110 to 130 megahertz, if I remember right. So I want to make an antenna, but the antenna theory says that it's going to be effective only if it is lambda by 2 in length. So is it a desirable property?
So can you repeat it again, sir?
Say I want to make an VHF antenna for the aircraft, okay, and the range of frequencies which I can operate is say from 100 to 130 megahertz.
Yes, sir.
And I design one antenna which is for a particular frequency. So is it desirable to have antennas which will operate only for one particular frequency? And I am flying from Chennai to Delhi. And en route, there will be so many air traffic controls which you have to communicate. Okay, I'll give you a very simpler example. Your car radio, it has a FM receiver, and you make one antenna which will work only for 93.5 FM. Is it desirable or not?
No, sir, because we can't change the channel.
Good, because every time you change the channel, then you will start changing the antenna, which is a mechanical thing, okay? Which is impossible, right? You can't keep, every time you change a channel, you can't keep changing antennas. So I would like the antenna to work over a range of frequencies. So I don't want it to be very narrow band, okay? Contrary to what you might be thinking, that the antenna itself should act like a filter, but it's not so. You would like to have the antenna working over a range of frequency for the simple reason that you can't keep changing antennas within the band. So that's how this Q factor comes in. It's nothing but the resonant frequency. Now this resonant frequency is fixed mechanically, which is equal to, which is depending on this lambda by 2 criteria. Depending on, if you want a higher bandwidth, if I want this denominator to be bandwidth, this range of frequencies which I can operate. Okay, if this becomes high, then naturally the Q is going to be low. So you like to have a low Q antenna. So depending on if you're just operating only on one spot frequency, I can go for a high Q antenna. Otherwise, I go for a low Q antenna. And relationship is simple. FR resonant frequency by bandwidth is Q. Now this leads us to this, how do I say whether it is acceptable or not? It is this criteria. As long as the VSWR doesn't exceed 2, then it is a practically feasible antenna. Okay, just draw attention. So what I mean by this is your frequency, and y-axis is VSWR. I draw a line VSWR 2. My response is something like this. Then this becomes my bandwidth. Resonant frequency might be somewhere here. Okay. Resonant frequency is at the center, but on either side you can operate. So if you are made an antenna for 100 megahertz, you can definitely use it for 110 megahertz as well as 90 megahertz. These are just hypothetical figures. Okay? That finally depends on the Q of the antenna. So then you will ask me, how do I change this Q? This Q is basically based on the ratio of the length of the conductor to the diameter of the conductor. So let us say the antenna is a rod with a diameter D and length L. This is D. This ratio of L by D is going to affect Q. And what antenna theory says is, if the diameter is increasing, definitely L by D is going down. If L by D goes down, the Q factor goes down. And if Q factor goes down, the bandwidth improves. So I can operate over a larger range of frequency. So I'm just playing with the geometry of the rod, of the antenna rod. I can always, length is fixed, which is dependent on this resonant frequency. But I can always play with the diameter of the rod. And that's how I change the Q of the antenna. Does it make sense? Priya?
Sir, can you come again, sir?
Okay. First of all, are you convinced that an antenna should operate over a range of frequency instead of one single frequency?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how do I achieve this range of frequency? That comes from this Q factor, and this Q is nothing but your resonant frequency divided by the range. Bandwidth is nothing but the range of frequency, okay, in which I am going to operate. So I decide my range of frequency, then I'll get this number for Q. And how this Q is going to vary is by the diameter of the length is fixed now. This length is fixed, given by lambda by 4 of the resonating frequency. But I can always play with the diameter of the rod, and accordingly I can change the Q. So if D increases, L by D naturally decreases. D is in the denominator. And if L by D decreases, the Q decreases. And if Q decreases, the bandwidth increases. So I can operate over a range of frequencies. Okay, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then we talked about polarization, which is nothing but the alignment of the electric vector. Definitely for very long antennas, you can't have a vertical antennas. So you go for a horizontally polarized antennas. This is nothing but you're just tying it between two trees. Okay, so we talked about impedances of the antenna and all this stuff. The next thing is directive, radiation pattern. In this, what you are worried is two things. One is what is the beam width, and second is how much gain the antenna is going to give. Okay. These two things we'll have to study a little bit. Well, of course, without proofs. And this put together will give you the radiation pattern of an antenna. So this lambda by 2 dipole, as I told you in the previous course, the cross section, it's like a donut. I showed you that figure of vada also. So you cut the vada and this is what you will see. Okay. Cut the vada, you will see this doublet. Figure of 8 pattern for a normal dipole. Now, how do we define beam width? Okay. This is something you people have seen on the headlight of a car when the weather is foggy. Okay, you can actually see the light beam going. Okay, so it has a finite dimension. It's a three-dimensional thing. Of course, in the longitudinal directions, the range, and you can mostly it is circular in cross section. Then you can say, okay, it's a narrow beam width or a wider beam with headlight. I'm not talking about the tip of the headlight, I'm talking about the beam width itself. Okay. Now, how do we define the beam width? So what you do is, if you are having an antenna, let us say, I'm just drawing the lambda by 2 and a rod, which is of course cut into 2 and all the stuff is there. Generally, you know that it's going to be maximum in this direction. Either way, okay. This perpendicular to it is maximum. Again, it comes from the simple optics. Okay, if you are standing here, you can see the complete rod or the complete antenna. But imagine now you are moving in a circle and you have come to this tip. What you are going to see is just one small circle, right? You're going to see the cross section. Sarup, are you getting this idea?
Not really.
See, antenna, I placed this antenna. I'm just talking in 2 dimensions, okay now. I lay it flat on the ground. An antenna of lambda by 2 length. That is fixed, that is my operating frequency. Total length is lambda by 2. That's okay, fine, up to that?
Yes, sir.
And then I just keep it on let's assume I keep it on a table which is approximately your height. We'll assume that it's a VHF antenna which is around 1 meter in length. So I keep this rod. Now, if I look from the sideways, I can see the complete rod, right? This complete rod I can see is visible to me.
Yes, sir.
Now I move around, the rod is kept constant and I move around the table and I come to the other end of the table. Now what will you see of the rod?
Only the tip.
Only.
Only the tip of the rod, which is nothing but a circle.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Same thing for antennas also. The concentration of power is going to be perpendicular to the orientation of the antenna. So you are expecting maximum radiation in this direction, that is perpendicular to it. And this is just a mirror image of it. So what you do is you keep this is, let us say it's connected to a transmitter. You move around this complete area with a receiver and keep noting down the power. And definitely you know that perpendicular at the midpoint, you are going to see maximum. So you reach a point where there is maximum radiation. This point, let's assume it is this point. Now you go radially and keep measuring points which are 50% of your maximum power. Okay, that is called the 3 dB point. Last course I told you how this 3 dB is nothing but 50% of the maximum power or any power is 3 dB. Now you got 2 points. So you have plotted this. Wherever it is 3 dB down, you are plotting it. Completely you are plotting this shape. And then you draw 2 radial lines intersecting these points. Now this angle is nothing but your beam width. All you have to do is just think about your torchlight, okay, on a foggy day. On the axis of the torch, you will find maximum illumination. But the moment you change your orientation of the torch slightly, you will find the illumination coming down. The same way in antennas also, the radiation is going to be in the direction perpendicular to the antenna. So this area is what you expect maximum radiation. And this the points at which the power level reduces by half is the point which is of interest to us. And then you just draw these 2 lines. Okay, these concentric circles is nothing but each circle, actually there is a mistake in the figure, the other figure will be correct, I'll show you the other one. Each one is, this is 0, 1 and 1, 2, and he has shown it for 3 dB. This he is taking it as 3 dB, okay, this complete circle. So on the 3 dB circle, wherever this pattern is intersecting, you draw 2 lines and then measure the angle that becomes the beam width of the antenna. Now this beam width, finally, why do I, one is, okay, I would like to have directivity in some cases, like suppose it's a radar, I want to scan the complete area, then I require directivity. But if it is the other purpose is I want gain. I want to increase the power which is getting radiated. Like last class as I asked you, antenna is a passive device. It's not going to increase the power on its own. So what it is trying to do is, instead of transmitting in a circle, let's say 2D, it's pumping energy in a particular direction. So instead of this transmission all over, you're trying to pump it in one particular direction. That's what, that's how you get the gain. Now this gain is given by this formula. 10 times 2 log 203 by B in degrees. Okay. So if you get this beam width, substitute here, you'll get the gain in dB. This gain is going to be so much dB gain. This will be used, we saw that Ferris equation, where we said that if I know what is my transmitted power coming out and what is received, In that formula, this PR was a function of gain of transmitting antenna and gain of receiver antenna, if you remember. Okay, this G is nothing but what you're going to get from this equation. So that's where you fit these numbers into that equation and get the received power. So beam width, polarization, impedance, characteristic impedance, and then gain. And of course beam width. All these things are important for any antenna. Okay, if you draw concentric circles, probably you will find it slightly difficult. This is another representation which is not given in the book, okay, in a reference book. So this 0 points to the axis of the antenna, the central axis. Y is the power in dB. So what it says, and if you see, this is the angle. For this particular antenna, it's a fictitious antenna. Maximum power is 0 dB, and it is negative because dB, as I told you, is a ratio, okay? P by some reference. So let us say this is my reference level. At this point, it is half, and half is nothing but minus 3 dB. This negative sign is important because it's going to be less than the maximum value at this particular angle. We are drawing this line here, and you can find out what is the angle, and this is called as the half power beam width. Beam width is what you have seen, half power, because the power is reduced by 50%. Okay. So generally data sheets will give you this sort of representation only. Okay, you just think over the next class, you can answer this question. Let us say we are having a dish antenna, and this is for a dish antenna. He has given this radiation pattern, but surprisingly he has given some radiation which is 180 degrees, okay, which means that so you have an antenna which is directional. He says that maximum power is in 0 degrees, but when you talk about 180 degrees, he is telling that some power is coming out here also. Don't you think it is quite strange? So this particular thing is called the back lobe. Okay, back lobe. If this is back lobe, definitely the front one is called front lobe. So one definition, one parameter which will be interested is front to back lobe ratio. Saurabh, would you like to have a higher front to back lobe ratio or lesser?
Don't know, sir.
You can think and answer. Next question, next class, you let me know. Okay. My question is, let us assume this, we'll just name it as A and this as B. Do you want a high A by B ratio or less A by B ratio? Okay, just let me know in the next class. Okay, few concepts might be slightly difficult for you people. I suggest you go through Friendship, and if you have any doubts, please ask me in the next class before we proceed with the next topic. Okay. Okay, thanks Priya and Saurabh. We'll meet in the next class.
Thank you, sir.